Hello and welcome to 60 Minutes or Less, a new podcast from Verticate for Breakfast. I'm Andy Hughes, and for our 6th episode we welcome royalty, the only guest thus far with an OBE, former world number 1 in snooker, Steve Davis. Amassing 71 major titles over his playing career, Davis remains one of the world's best known snooker players. Not content with such a glittering career though, Davis shifted gears dramatically when he retired, moving into the world of music, first as a DJ and radio host, then as one-third of the Utopia Strong, trading in his snooker cue for a modular synth. As you can imagine, Steve didn't come on to talk snooker, nor did he come on to talk about his brief appearance on TV show The Increasingly Poor Decisions of Todd, Margaret. Rather, the Utopia Strong have just released a new record, the BBC Sessions. Capturing a live session the trio recorded at Maida Vale for Marc Riley's BBC Radio 6 music show in September 2022, the record, with its brilliant old-school cover, is out now via Tastemakers Rocket Recordings. I first met Steve on a night out in Manchester with local lot Trojan Horse almost a decade ago, drinking beers of varying percentages. Not long after that night, I somehow soon appeared on his radio show, The Interesting Alternative Show. And regardless of his credentials, it really didn't seem that big of a deal having popped round to our flat in Whalley Range to record the show because Steve was so affable and down to earth, something which I'm sure you'll hear yourself from our most recent chat. Just a heads up, we did have a few audio issues with this one, not the fault of Steve mind you, nothing major but there were a few things. Such is the joy of recording over Zoom. Anyway, onto the podcast. Enjoy! Music has obviously been a huge part of your life, even from a young age. But I get the impression that people still find it news to not only hear your DJ exploits, but being in an actual band too. Does it ever, come across that people are still at that stage, or?
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and I think what it does is it makes you appreciate that everybody's living on their own path through life, and not to take anything for granted when it comes to people's understanding. I mean, obviously snooker was was massive back in the 80s when there were 3 TV channels. You sort of couldn't really avoid it. But in recent years, it's obvious that because there's so many more entertainment ways out there that, the game, even though it's really popular and worldwide it is massively popular, the players don't have the facial recognition that the players of the 80s had. So that I'm aware of that. So I'm aware of the fact that just because you've done interviews, it doesn't mean to say that everybody's watching those interviews. So therein lies, if you're going to do a proper professional job on advertising anything you've got, you can't just assume just because you advertise it once that everybody knows about it. It's astonishing how often I think you probably have to, So, you have to bombard social media with stuff. Say your thing, and everybody has to bombard it because otherwise, in the timelines fly past, and people are not. Some people are sort of like addicted to looking at every post they see, but others just see the recent one. So that in itself is sort of an understanding of where I'm up to. I still have to repeat myself if I'm in the company of people that wouldn't know. So, and it's always a shock. Firstly, it's a shock. The DJing thing, I think quite a number of people know about, but the band thing, very few people know about.
Oh, really? Even still?
Yeah. But I'm talking about, I don't think I would say this, I'm talking about normal people, whoever they are.
The man on the street,
Your normal walk of life. And there's sometimes the people I bump into who are not music fans, and then the big chances they won't have a clue. So then you have to try and explain what's going on, and that gets even harder then. So sometimes it's best if they don't ask.
Just stick to the snooker.
Yeah, these people, I think the people, these types of people, the people I'm talking about are people that don't buy music.
Yeah,
they may listen to Spotify, but they are not. They're not music people. They're the people that have got other interests in their life. So it's irrelevant, really.
Yeah. They won't be seeing you at Glastonbury or what have you. Although maybe, you never know.
It was quite good the other night. I was doing a speaking thing in London, and the president I was sitting next to at the dinner table on the top table before I did my speaking thing was a musician and also had a Korg MS-10 back in the day. So he absolutely knew what a modular synth was. So we had a good chat. That was quite a pleasant shock.
that moves nicely into you yourself were introduced to modular synthesizers by Mike Bourne of Teeth of the Sea around 2016, almost 10 years ago. And I know that still seems crazy to say, it seems like yesterday, but much in the same way that someone accrues, vast amounts of vinyl records once they start getting into that sort of thing. I've heard that you've since accrued an ever-expanding array of analog synths, is that right, for your collection?
But more the modules, not actual synths as such. So, what I was attracted to when I saw Mike Bourne at the Cafe Otto playing in his sort of offshoot from Teeth of the Sea band called Hervicolari, with Sam Barn, was that this modular synth didn't have a keyboard. That was the thing that I went, wow, maybe I'm not going to be going down the road of trying to learn any instrument at this age. And I tried it before in the past, but this all of a sudden sort of perked up my interest because I was thinking, well, what is actually happening there? And I didn't, I should have put two and two together and knew that this wasn't a new occurrence, but I was sort of relatively ignorant of non-keyboard synthesis. So then when I started to discover that, it felt like, there's a big learning curve knowledge-wise, but the dexterity that, if you say 10,000 hours of practice and all that malarkey, the dexterity, it's not that, it's just knowledge. So I then ploughed full steam ahead into getting a load of modules, and unfortunately lockdown came along and everybody's hobbies became massive. So I got some more modules and I watched some more videos and I got some more modules, and now I live relatively close to Elevator Sound in Bristol, which is one of the only 2 bricks and mortar shops in the UK that deals in Eurorack and modular stuff. So having it on my doorstep is dangerous. And I've got far too many modules, I've got far too many albums, but as hobbies go, it keeps me off the streets.
Yes, that's true, yeah. It sounds funny as well to say, that there is like a bricks and mortar shop that sells these sorts of things. You'd expect it to be the sort of thing that you'd have to go down a side street and up a flight of stairs to go and get that sort of thing these days, wouldn't you?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think probably, historically a few of them have been sort of people doing it from their homes and that, but this particular shop, along with one in Scotland, they've got their act together and they seem to be going from strength to strength. It's not easy. The shop in Bristol called Elevator Sound has opened up a branch in Barcelona. So,
wow.
It must be, But I mean, it's quite fascinating. It's a very expensive way to make music.
Yeah.
Because the module makers, even the big ones, are not much bigger than boutique manufacturers. Some of them are bigger than that, but a lot of them are just like one-woman bands, two-woman bands, two-men. And so their overheads are quite high. So the modules themselves are, not cheap. So therefore, if you're going to set loads of them up, it becomes quite an expensive way of doing something that you could easily make inside a computer or with a groove box. But it's the fascination of the modular synth with the patch wires is that you choose the path. And it's there are cheaper ways where you could still choose the path, the direction of the signal, but it's the most flexible instrument I think you could possibly ever try to get your head around. And unfortunately, it's a bit like an onion. You peel back a layer, you think you've learned, you've got the keys to to number 42 Planet of Secret Life, and then all of a sudden you realise there's another layer underneath that, and another layer underneath that, and then you realise you may never get to the end of it, but it doesn't stop you making music. So since me bumping into Mike Bourne, it's just I could never have believed what was going to happen as a result.
That sounds a lot more fun as well than I've been reading Stephen Morris from New Order's book, and he delves into like the synthesizers with the keyboards and like floppy disks and all sorts, and that sounds incredibly frustrating, and it's work that it might be like hard to to figure out, but this sounds like it's something that's quite by the sounds of it for yourself, it sounds quite fun to actually work with these.
Yes, it is. Yeah, I mean, you don't, I mean, I think it'd be fair to say that when we made the first jams that then became the first Utopia Strong album, I really didn't know what I was doing. But I knew enough that if it sounded bad, to turn it down, and when it sounded okay, to keep it going. And that's where you're up to. So you choose what you keep and what you throw away. So therein lies the musical part of it. Whilst there's no dexterity, there is, you choose. You are the person who chooses what continues or change. You change whatever's not good. So, but early on I was really sort of raw and not really understanding what was going on. So, but in a way, sometimes that could be more fun because you make mistakes that make things different. So I think Carver Tarabi and Mike York are both always saying to me, because sometimes I have a little bit of imposter syndrome of, that I shouldn't really be, this is where I come from. But they keep on saying to me, like, honestly, it can sometimes work, and it's actually, breaking the rules makes things different. So hopefully, I've resisted the temptation to go down the road of learning any music theory since, which I could have done because it may have helped in some respect, but in other ways, I'm just sort of doing it by ear, and when it sounds horrible, then turning it down.
Yeah. Are there quite a few of the early demos where you're just completely turned down trying to figure things out?
Yeah. I mean, not so much in the jams, because we usually, and have done for most of the stuff we've made, just done long jams when we've been hanging out, and then listened back and chosen parts that where the magic started to happen. And it always seems like you need a sort of 10-minute period with modular to get it to start talking to the others, and then all of a sudden you hit a sweet spot, and then you're off and running. So that's the way it seems to work. So you have to sort of invest a bit of time, but you get your value if you stick with it. But when we were playing live, some of the first live ones, I wanted the ground to swallow me up. I mean, like the first time at Super Normal, we'd only done a couple of gigs. I just didn't. I basically barely added anything, I think. To the I might have just about got a drum beat going by the end of 40 minutes. I was just like rabbit in the headlights. But actually it was quite a chilled out thing listening back to it. But it was, I think we did well. The first time we played at Glastonbury in the Crowbar, Crow's Nest. The Crow's Nest up the top of the hill, and I didn't know what I was doing then, but it was all right. I think the Cure were on the main stage, so there's very few people around, so it was all right. But and so since then, I've sort of I've sort of learned my trade a bit, and sort of the actual thought of going on a stage now isn't so frightening, but it was to start with. I was just like gibbering wreck, more so than any snooker match, because maybe I had less credentials to sort of take to the stage. I was sort of just worried. But I've stopped going like that at the end of a gig now, because it's just felt like, oh God, it's another one I've got away with. But I've moved on now, and I'm sort of starting to enjoy them, which is nice. But it's amazing to do it.
Yeah, I bet. There's quite a few really interesting things that Carvis has said about you guys getting together, the magic of those initial sessions when you were recording the first record. And I really liked something that you'd said yourself, that in football terms, you saw yourself as a strong midfielder, and you were always creating chances for Carvis or Mike. Do you still feel, obviously, like you say, you've come a lot more on with confidence and such, and figuring out how you're using the equipment. Do you think that's come on a bit? So maybe you're more up there with Carvis and Mike, or?
Well, maybe I have the capability to be more sort of taking centre stage or something. But actually, there is the need for some type of stability when the three of us doing it, and Mike and Carvis have got sort of carte blanche to sort of improvise and do stuff. That it's quite nice if I stay grounded doing that. It gives them the springboard to do that. So I don't see that changing much, because I don't know, especially when if I'm doing bass lines and drums for instance, then if it's going to be that type of music, I can't change that, because Carvis and Mike can't do that, so I've got to do that. So I think it's quite, I don't mind that. It gives me some type of security that I know my role. But then the more fun thing would be if we're improvising from making new music. Then you just go off piste. So that's quite nice. But come the gig, I think we've realised what is required of a gig. So we have to have some type of foot tapper at some stage. Maybe so. I don't know. But especially when it's a stand-up audience. Although we have done some of our best gigs when they've been sit-down ones, which is interesting. Yeah.
There's a lot to be said for the sit-down gig.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. We went to where you played, funnily enough, the once in Manchester. We went to see a gig a couple of weeks ago at the Carlton Club. And because of the type of music it is, very, like soft and lots of not improvised, but lots of building melodies and such. And I was just thinking on the cycle there, I was like, I hope this is bloody sat down, because it's like you say, you need a few foot tappers in there.
Yeah, I think when we played there, a few people sat down at the front, but I'm pleased we have done some dancier tracks when we played gig, some more sort of normal tracks from stuff that will be on albums, because it is quite a nice feeling to sort of be a little bit more party atmosphere within the confines that we're going to end up being pretty trippy at the end anyway.
We rather spoke with John Dwyer of the OCs about song length, and he spoke of these mammoth playing sessions, and he suggested that it was the only way to explore everything that they're capable of, and then whittling, things down, which is very much the way you guys work. Have you found yourself losing track of time when, you're getting lost in these hypnotic jams that you perform and going, beyond what you've expected?
No, but I don't think we've gone really sort of down a rabbit hole of doing sort of 2 or 3 hour sort of. And what we've worked out now is that we're sort of been recording stuff for sort of the next album, and we sort of we set up and start a piece off. And then all of a sudden, we've got more idea of whether there's material to be used or not. So we know full well to keep it going or to stop it and then start again and try something else. So I think we're a bit more aware of things rather than just aimlessly piling out hour upon hour. But I can understand what he's saying, because that sort of deep workout where you're really getting into it does produce these special moments that you're never going to. I don't think you're going to produce them if you write it or if you pre do it and plan it out.
Yeah.
And we have done one track where we absolutely, as close as possible to planning it out, which we put on the compilation album that Rocket put on. The track's called Harpies, and that we tried to approach that to specifically write a track that was going to be 6 minutes long for the compilation album. That was quite an interesting challenge, and that was. I don't think I would have had a chance to have done that if it wasn't for the fact I was with Carlos and Mike, who have experience of that. So, but I think we don't want to go too much down that road. I think we quite like the fact that the magic does happen when you haven't even got a clue what's around the corner. And to that end, sort of improvised music. I wonder whether that's going to be the future more. He's trying to work out. I'm not talking about Utopia Strong, but what is the future for music? What are people going to be listening to? And knowing a bit more about how things happen now and how music is written and how it's recorded, and knowing full well that there's overdubs and it's not real. Effectively, it's a recorded piece with stuff that's been manipulated. I wonder whether the future is that there's going to be a premium on live or improvised music where it's obvious that it hasn't been messed around with, like bum notes, and like to the point where, well, this is as real as I can listen to, because if they were going to make it like as a studio album, they'd have made it better than that, and so is the next generation going to be much more interested in as live, as improvised, no editing, whether there's a market for that in the future as to what's going to happen. Otherwise, how long does this type of music carry on for 200 years? Where does it go? That's something that, where does the next avenue come from?
it's all about authenticity, really, isn't it? And I think some listeners crave that sort of, that input in the music rather than have, because things are a lot better when they're a bit rough, and hence the reason why people love live music so much, I suppose.
Yeah, I mean, we got 4 albums that we put out ourselves, as well as the Rocket albums. We've got another one coming out somewhere down the line, and they're waltz and all. And actually, those little waltz, they become part of the music, and you wait for them as well. A bit like somebody shouting out in the audience. We got the last privately released album, I think was at the Carlton Club. Yeah, so there's towards the end of side 2, somebody in the crowd goes, "Come on, Steve!" It's out of the blue. But it was only a 2-track recording, so I'm sure there's software that could do it, but we just left it in because it was guaranteed to be live. It was lovely. Yeah. Actually, what I've done, I'm doing some stuff with a gentleman down in Bristol called Gaz Williams, who's a bass guitarist, and he's been in a few bands, and also been support. He's a musician when Charlotte Church does Pop Dungeon.
Wow.
And he's banging into modular as well. So we decided I think we're gonna try and bring out a record label of modular stuff that is improvised, so long form pieces as well. So that'd be a side project, but it's not it's really all about the fact we've got some momentum with the Utopia Strong and Rocket recording. So that's lovely. So the fact that they've actually stuck with it, the fact that they actually stuck with it in the first place is quite funny, because it must have been, as I sort of mentioned in that medical grade music book, I would have been a liability. They would have been a laughing stock if they just put an album out that was regarded as total shit, and the only reason they put it out was because they thought it might get some traction because the snooker players involved.
Yeah.
Now it's moved on, and they went with it, and we've got the 3rd album coming out that it's sort of really nice to be part of the team now, and we sort of both fulfilled our trust in each other. Just
think what the man on the street will think when they find out about this modular record as well.
Yeah, I did. Nobody in the snooker world has a clue. Yeah, everybody's in their own world, so only one person, I think. I gave the CD to 2 people. I won't tell you who. It doesn't matter. I never got any response back. I'm sure it was thrown straight in the bin. But one snooker player, when I listened to it. It was the first album. He said, I listened to it. He said, "You need a few more songs." And I went, "Oh yeah, it's not really our thing, the singing bit, but at least he'd listened to it." So I gave him some heads up for that. But yeah, that was So there's no crossover going on at all. So I think most of the snooker players just think I DJ. I don't think they have really any. Ken Doherty came to a gig once in Whelan's in Ireland, in Dublin. Yeah, so we were playing, the Utopia Strong were playing there on a little mini tour, and I said, "Ken, no, we're playing tonight. If you want to come along." So he came along, but it was rammed, which was really nice. It was, and the closest he could get was sort of like an L-shaped bar. So he was just standing around the side. He couldn't get close to it, and he also he doesn't want to be right down the front. Yeah. So I still don't think he knew it was a band. I think he thought it was just DJing. I don't know for sure, but
yeah. Thought you were just sat down at a little CD, whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't know. I'm not asking.
It must have seemed strange as well, the fact that you were like, "Oh yeah, come down, I'm playing a gig," and he probably thought, "Yeah, all right, Steve, yeah," and then obviously turns up and there's this, mass of people.
Yeah.
So on top of, talking about Rocket, you've got a new record out in March.
Yeah.
The BBC sessions, and it's a 5-track piece, isn't it? And it's a selection of pieces that you've taken from when you did Maida Vale session for Marc Riley for Six Music. Obviously you've had some history with the BBC, but that was in your old job. How did you feel stepping into Maida Vale with a different hat on? It must have been crazy.
Yeah, totally crazy. I mean, it's all been surreal, but to turn up at a place that has so much history, I think one of my, if I've got any skill at all from that's transferable from what I've done before, not being overawed in the heat of the moment is something that I've probably had quite a good lot of training about. So going there and being able to just do something and not think too much about it. But perhaps it's sort of good to be brain dead sometimes when maybe it's good in sport to not think too much, and perhaps it's good in to not think too much about your surroundings and what the normative, what's going on. So I was able to just enjoy it, and we come off the back of a couple of gigs anyway, so we were sort of a little bit more in the swing of it. But it was amazing to think that's where it all sort of started. Well, certainly so much has gone on there anyway. Yeah, so I've never been in that type of environment before, so I had nothing to judge it by. Yeah, so but obviously Carvers and Mike were well, chuffed with going there. Although Carvers has been there before in for various things, but for me, I just sort of I didn't think too much about the fact that it was live on radio. If I'd have thought about it, it'd been awful. But we just did it. We did the interviews with with Marc right in between, and then it's time for another track. It's just and then you have to get on with it. So living in the moment's really something I'm sort of quite happy I can do.
I think he seems to make it quite a comfortable environment, doesn't he, as well?
Totally.
Riley,
it was good. Yeah. We had no plan for the tracks really, other than just a little bit of the experience of knowing some things that have worked, some shapes, how things have evolved, and then in between the interview part and the piece the first piece we played, we had a little bit of time to sort of set up the next piece, and we came up with a little melody or sequence and went, let's go with that and let's see where that goes. And we had a rough idea of the time we had to play for, so we tried to sort of think, okay, after 4 minutes we've got to wind it down. So we were sort of clock watching a bit, because otherwise we'd have got carried away with ourselves. And they worked. We couldn't have asked for them to have worked out better. So this is how it's come about. It would never have seen the light of day if it had been rubbish, obviously. But we sort of said to Rocket, we think these are all right, and certainly they're all right for live performances. So do you want to put it out? Because I think they think they're pretty sort of strong as a statement of where we're up to as a band. And they went, yeah, we'll do it. And so then we obviously had to do it in the style of the BBC session style. But Carver's had the idea. No, actually, I think Johnny did, or Chris Reader had the idea that all the the bands are on the
so
names
good.
Are on the band.
So good, yeah.
They're different on the album to the CD.
Really?
Yeah. So the first one on the CD is called Piss Boat. It's one of Carver's hobbies. He loves made up names of bands and tracks. So much so on Twitter, he every now and again you'll see him say "now playing," and it's just a made up band. Don't give the game away. And then a few of his mates are going I love that track, and there's other people trying to search for it on Discogs. But so the album's got different ones as well. But I think he was halfway through writing a book on the loads of made-up bands and the backstories for all of them.
Oh, brilliant.
And I reckon it would be a really good book, because I think he's got another book in him, because he was a good writer.
Definitely, yeah. Funnily enough, I was going to ask, because I love the artwork, and it's those strange fruit releases, isn't it? And I was zooming in, and I was like, is that real? And then I saw a few that I noticed. So Disappointing Box Set was a good one, and Sexy Rock Face, which I thought was great. So do you have fond memories of these types of releases and these sorts of sessions from way back when?
I haven't got massive amount. I wasn't buying loads of them, but I got a few of them. Robert Wyatt's got one, I think. I'm trying to think who's good. I've got.
They were quite stretched out, and they were different types of.
Yeah, I've probably got half a dozen. I'm now trying to think what they are, but no, it wasn't something. Not massively. No, maybe if the Canterbury bands did something. I'm trying to think if they would have done or not. I've got All Tech done one. I'm trying. I'd have to look them up to know which ones I've got. But All Tech have done one. I'm sure. Or they've done something. I don't know. Anyway, I've got them, but I don't think I ever got one when it came out. So yeah, and I've got others, I'm sure.
Because I always loved that. It's quite similar to that XTC record, where that's got all the writing on the front, and it's so captivating, isn't it? So I bet Carver's had such a fun time coming up with all these.
Yeah. Oh, then they changed it. Well, then then the artwork changed, didn't it? Yeah, but yeah, when it was the idea was sort of put forward, it seemed like a no-brainer. So yeah, I think it will be interesting to see how it's. It's not like. It's not going to be, I don't know what record shops it goes into, but it will probably sort of have a few people going, oh, blimey, like, whether it makes any difference to anything, but it's still it's a great nod, especially at where we did it.
I'd love it as well if someone, got it in and didn't realise what they had and just chucked it in the second-hand bin or, something like that.
Well, so they all end up there in the end, don't they?
Well, true, yeah. So
I don't think we've not seen medical grade music in many pound bookshops yet, so that's good.
No, that's as long as it's not in the works 2 for £5 or something like that. Yeah, the songs on the new record, and I suppose the records that you've put out previously have been dubbed oral explorations, which I think is great. And obviously, when you're piecing things together, you're developing sounds over these periods before, deciding, we'll go with this or go with that. And yeah, like we touched on before, Carver saying that there was a touch of magic to it. So obviously you've said it was pretty much for yourself to go kind of brain dead to just focus on what the music is. But, as a trio, how does it feel when you all click into place and it's really working out and it's just like kind of like a mind meld between the three of you?
That's a thing of beauty that I am so honoured to have actually experienced, because otherwise the only way you get that is by sitting down and listening to a piece of music that you absolutely love. But to be in the thick of it and it actually being created around you and you're one of the parts of it is quite astonishing. It's like that's in a way the improvised music and the way we've done it is sort of similar to sport in as much as you're improvising when you're playing sport. You don't know how it's going to come out, the outcome. You don't know, even if you've prepared properly, that you're going to hit a purple patch during the game. And then when you do hit a purple patch during a game, the feeling of like just being at one with the table or whatever it might be, and you're just seeing the balls bigger than, or whatever it might, whatever, and everything, you're timing it perfectly. That is the beautiful thing, and that's the same feeling that I've sort of been able to get on occasions when we've done something, whether it's been live or just recording and sort of with rehearsals or recording it with a view to putting it out. And you sort of, every now and again, you sort of look up and somebody's you're sort of half smiling, going, "This is good. Keep this going. No need to rock the boat here for a while because this has got legs." And that is something that I think it's nice if you're a good listener. So I suppose I've got that in my armoury. That is sort of, I sort of tend to think I can spot a good track from an average one. Yeah, it happened recently. We were recording a piece for, hopefully it won't be the fourth album.
Mm.
And it just, it ended up, I think the piece was like 35, 40 minutes long in total, because we didn't want to lose it. We obviously won't put it all out like that, but yeah, it's a possibility as a whole side, because it just grows. So I can't quite believe that's happened to me. So yeah, but I think this is the beauty of now what people can do with. For me, with modular synthesizers and that, where you don't have to have any levels of dexterity, I think more people can experience this if they throw themselves in the deep end and do it. So the equipment's all out there now for people to do, and I would encourage people to collaborate with other people, because that's also when I think more magic happens than if you do it on your own, and you can't quite work out the some of the parts is greater than the whole, the other way around, whatever it is. Yeah. It's just things happen that you wouldn't have done on your own, and you sit down, listen to it with a couple of beers later on that evening, and pat yourselves on the back, going, "Did we do that? Did that really happen?" You actually sort of half have to pinch yourself, because you can't really believe, because you were in the moment, you were doing it. You didn't have time to really sit back and listen to it. Then when you got the time to sit back and listen, you go, "Fucking hell, that is really, did we do that?" So we've had so many moments like that. And then then obviously, there is a possibility with the studio album, you can enhance it with some, whatever, some overdubs, and that then becomes the next phase, is to make sure you don't, ruin the cake, get the balance right, because inherently, the sort of the mix in the first place had this beauty that you don't want to spoil. So we all have this sort of, I think that we're all aware of that as well. But that great thing about this album is, that's just the recording. Nothing's been touched at all.
Yeah, and I mean, what I was going to say earlier was, you saying that it's amazing, and you sit back and you say, I can't believe that's us, and what happened. Did the 14-year-old prog loving Steve Davis, ever imagine this eventuality?
It was amazing doing the radio show. That we did a radio. Yeah. When David Allen came in the studio, we did a show with David Allen. Oh, bloody hell! Like, wow, what? And then Steve mental blank all of a sudden. Steve Village goes, oh, bloody hell, Steve, like, what the fuck's happening? Like, we did a radio show, and then all of a sudden my heroes are, sort of rubbing shoulders with my heroes in the past. I'd never have thought one day that I would have been going, thanks very much for all the pleasure you've given me all the years. And then it got even sillier because, Steve Village asked us to go and be the support on his tour recently. So we were the support band for Steve Village, and on his tour bus. You couldn't make it up, It's just, and once again, if I'd have stopped to think about it too much, I'd have sort of, the wrong type of mentality. I might have frozen in the moment, but I just went, this is just brilliant. So I don't know. I had no aspirations to make music. I'd sort of tried to learn to play the piano in the 80s, but that was never going to go anywhere. I was then smitten with a guy called the Gas Man, Christopher Reeves. Brilliant, mad music. And he writes that all, I think, in the box in a computer. He does it all that way, I think. Well, he had done. So I tried getting a DAW, and I thought, okay, this is time I'm going to start to make some music. And I just hit a brick wall of, I don't know what I'm doing. So that didn't go anywhere. So then all of a sudden, I had no aspirations to do anything along those lines until I saw this modular synth and thought, wow, that looks like fun apart from anything else. And then it was only because of the fact that I had this modular synth, and Carvis and Mike went, well, we'll come round, instead of just drinking beer, we drink beer and make some music, to hang out, right? That's all it was. There was no plan at all. So so that the first time we ever made some music, it was just for the hanging out. And at the end of it, that night, we listened back to it all and went, fucking hell, that bit's good. Well, we could make that into an album. And it was only then that it solidified. So that was January 2018. So it seems like it's only the blink of an eye. It took me quite a while to learn. I had a couple of years of this modular synth just sitting there looking at it like mysteriously thinking, what the fuck does this do? I don't know. And then lockdown happened and I had loads of time to look at a lot of videos, so I got a bit stronger at it. And then the next minute is we got an album out and Rocket are going, yeah, we'll have to listen to it first because it might be shit and we don't want this. And that's how it started. And then the next minute was we're off and running. And I will say, though, that when we sat down, it's in the book, I think, but when we sat down with Chris Reader in Cafe Otto, which was quite an act that Cafe Otto was where I went to see Mike Bourne play. Yeah. And then we decided to sort of sign the contract or shake hands at Cafe Otto. And he went, yeah, we like it. We're going to go with it. And we went, great. So we all shook hands on it. And then all of a sudden, Chris Reader said to us, and you will be doing some live shows to sort of, when the album comes out, won't you? And of course, Carvis and Mike have gone, of course we will. And I went, what? Oh, fuck. Really? And my heart, my arsehole went like that, thinking, oh no, this is going to be like terrible. And then we actually then, at some stage, did a gig in London, a very early on gig, that became a record called Dream Sweeper that we've got as one of our private albums, we were playing on the same gig as Teeth of the Sea at Oslo in Hackney. And beforehand, I was so nervous, and I stormed into the Teeth of the Sea lads' dressing room because they were like just chilling out, waiting for us to do our bit. And I just walked up to Mike Ball and sort of half jokingly, but half sort of nervous as a kid, and went, "This is all your fucking fault." And then sort of, the nerves are terrible, but then after you come off, it's good fun. It's all, it has to be that way. Especially going into the unknown, because I don't know what it would be like to play rehearsed music. That's an interesting thing. I have no experience of that, so all I have is in the moment of hopefully going with the flow and not not playing a bum note or a drum riff that's out of time or whatever.
Or being distracted by someone saying, "Go on, Steve."
Go on, Steve, yeah.
I take it that, strong percentage beer is still one of the good factors.
Well, it seemed like the first couple of albums were fueled on it. I remember we had a big lock-in once at Mike's place down in Glastonbury because the snow had... We had a really good session once where we were snowed in for 3 days. That was good. But we managed to get a good selection in from the local supermarket before the snow arrived. Yeah, I don't think this is nothing to be proud of. It's just, let's face it, it's the taste rather. It's the taste more than anything else. But yeah, I think Vocation as maybe should get a credit on the album along with... I'm trying to think of who else now, and probably who else should be mentioned. I don't know. Other breweries are available. I think we're going to be DJing at Arbor soon, but I don't think it's been announced yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah, down in Bristol, but I don't think it's been announced, so I shouldn't. Yeah, but I don't know. I come from a working men's club. I didn't start in a snooker club. I started in a working men's club. Snooker clubs weren't all back in the 70s. Snooker halls, they weren't necessarily any beer. There was teas and coffees only in a lot of snooker clubs. It was only into the 80s where they had licenses. But my father was a working men's club. He would have been playing at the Carlton Club when it was a working men's club.
Right, yeah.
So that's the type of place I started off in. So I learned to have a drink with my elders, sort of sensible beer rather than getting out of it as a kid. So I've always been sensible. But yeah, obviously they're getting stronger.
I like the idea as well, just filling up the liner notes with, Vocation, Do-Gooder and all that, or whatever they're called.
Yeah, Thornbridge, bit of Thornbridge. What's another one? I just think it is. We did. Where did we do recently? A brewery up in Cheltenham. That was a good night. Hazy IPAs. I don't know.
A killer.
Fantastic. Yeah.
To switch somewhat, the closing track on the new record, Weatherall. Obviously, when you put the two together, it makes sense that it was named, for Andrew Weatherall and his festival in September 2022, where you all made an appearance. And the story goes that both punter and player got drenched during your performance when the heavens opened up. What was that experience like?
Mad. The next act, Tom, I forget what it was now, American act, they didn't even play. They just all cancelled.
Right.
It was in the castle, sort of in the big courtyard bit, massive, inside the place, and it was summer, and they would sort of go, and I was looking around and thinking, well, there's no roof over this. Like they go, what's the weather forecast? Well, they're going out and apparently it might rain. Wow, what happens if it rains? Like there's nothing over the stage, let alone over any punters, So we started off, it was all right, and then during Weatherall, fortunately we played most of our set. We sort of, I don't know, it was practically 30 minutes of it. It wasn't a big long set. It was just part of the evening, and then it started raining. Well, a modular synth has got all the patch, there's holes in it everywhere, straight through to the electrics underneath, the power cables. So it starts raining, but it didn't sort of just spit. It was more or less immediate downpour, of a biblical downpour. And so I was sort of over I was over it I'm not the biggest person in the world. I was trying to sort of occupy space over the top of it. And then, like, I had a sort of shirt and I was like, like that. It was getting a bit wet. Like, Carvis's pedals are out there, so is Mike's pedals at the front. And it fucking pissed down. The crowd, there was nowhere for anybody to... There was 2 trees, which isn't a great idea anyway, but that was all there was. Everyone was huddled under those and running to the edges. And in the blink of an eye, the whole thing was just... music stopped everything. Then they ran on through tarpaulins over our equipment and then waited for it to subside. But it just seemed like it was... Andy Weatherall going, yeah, you think you're doing, I'm going to have a piss on you from afar, from above. It was brilliant. And we'd sort of done this piece before, but it sort of solidified during that one that it was a big sort of finale, a big sort of wall of sound. I wouldn't say it'd be wrong to say think Sun O, but that we sort of try to get a big drone going and just give it some sort of like some heavyweight, immense sound. And it really felt like, we got most of it in before the end, but it wasn't recorded, which is a shame. That was the one thing we didn't record it because the guys, the sound guys, had enough to be doing without us going and asking can you record this, please? But it was just great. So then when we came, but that was just after. So then we came straight to the Maida Vale studios off the back of that, and thought, well, let's do something approximating that, with that sort of that shape. And that turned out well as well. So that's our homage to the fact that Andy Weatherall was really sort of, he liked Brain Surgeons 3 from the first album. He really thought that was a good track, and we couldn't believe that he did. And then he invited us to play at the East Festival. It was cancelled because of COVID. But then they decided when it was back on the following year, when the next time it was on, to sort of have the same lineup as a sort of testimony to him. So that's what happened. So we met his wife and ex-wife and that, and everybody was just pleased to be there. And then, but then like half an hour after that, the sun was out and we were listening to a techno set. It was brilliant. And I got that was a great track I heard. Was it? What's the track I heard? Oh, Joanne McLean, great track. One of the DJs played a track by Joanne McLean from a remix album. Anyway. Happy House. Called Happy House, but it's a remix. Really great Happy House. Yeah, so sort of you played that a few times. That's sort of quite a nice memory to have listened to that afterwards. And then everybody else had a smile on their face. So the only unfortunate was, but you probably have to find out who they were. If you could probably see the bill, you might be able to find the American guy. You just had to. Thanks very much. I don't know if he played last year. I don't know.
Hilarious if that was his one festival appearance of the year. He's got to shoot off.
Well. I mean, I wonder who it was. I don't know. I wasn't in. I was still at the stage of being nervous there beforehand, so I wasn't really. If anybody had said any names to me, they would have been in one ear and out the other.
Yeah. So, lastly, you've talked about it yourself, and you've mentioned that Rocket are still, such a great team with you guys, and also you've got releases that you might be doing off your own back. But there is a new record on the way, by the sounds of it, after this new BBC Sessions record.
Process.
Yeah. So how's everything going with the working out of that?
Yeah, great. I mean, and funnily enough, getting back to what we were talking about, the improvising for long form improvisation, we seem to have made an album quicker. Like we've got an album's worth of material quicker than we would have done in the first place. As if our strike rate, because we sort of work, we must have some sort of. We must have bonded a bit that whatever comes out is a little bit more likely to be okay, that we haven't got to wade through hour upon hour upon hour. So it's not just sort of the numbers game. We actually sort of have honed it a bit, that we haven't wasted so much of the time we can get together in just blindly making loads of recordings until we stumble upon one. We seem like we've hit upon a few good grooves a lot earlier. So that's nice, as long as we don't lose the naivety. Which is sort of something that is a value as well. So I'm always sort of, I'm the one who wants to keep everything as it was, and then Carvis and Mike are sort of, well, Carvis are going, no, we can make this better. There's a little bit of that going on, but we're quite fortunate, I think, because we've got the studio albums, including this one, which is it's a different one. We've got the studio albums that will be that way, but then the small releases that we're putting out are where we can put out the long form, waltz and all, rehearsals, gigs, whatever. So that sort of itch has been scratched as well. So we can do the both.
And that's perfect. And as Britain's #1 harmonium / guitar / bagpipes and modular synth power trio, as you described it in the book, yeah, I think you've got the market cornered, really, haven't you?
It is really nice. It's really nice when Mike walks up out of the blue, gets his bagpipes out and walks to the front. It's sort of like, it's quite funny watching, what the fuck, what's going on here? Especially with people who don't know what they're going to see. So, and it just seems to work nicely, the balance, of the different instruments. The harmonium and the bagpipes are fantastic. But Carver's has got a synth. He quite likes the idea of he's got a synth at the moment. He's quite enjoying that. And we've done some stuff where the guitar's been left in the case, which has been interesting.
Bloody hell.
But we did think that to be truly improvised, that I'd have to play guitar. No. To be truly improvised, I'd have to play bagpipes. Mike would have to play guitar, but then he can play guitar, and Carlos would have to play synth. It wouldn't work the other way around because Mike can play a synth. Yeah, he's got modular as well. But yeah, then that would be frightening. I don't think I'd get too many notes out of the bagpipes.
You could do what your snooker colleague suggested and do a bit of singing.
Oh God. Yeah, we leave that. That's another. That's 86 to be left in the charts.
Maybe your solo project after all these years.
Yeah, but it's quite nice. I mean, I probably already had one, but I've never even looked it up. But it's quite funny now. I have an entry on 1 second. I'm Steve Davis 60. On Discogs, I'm Steve Davis brackets 60. There's 59 before me entries of other Steve Davis artists. But I've got an entry on Discogs.
In the snooker world, you're right in the single digits, but in Discogs world, you're.
I've got a bigger CV than Alex Higgins and who else has had a record out from the snooker? Who did have Tony Knowles, Alex Higgins. Frightening.
That's brilliant, though, Steve. Thank you very much. It was lovely.
Cheers, Andy.
Lovely
Good
to
see
chat.
you again.
Yeah, you too.